Okay, I'm gonna remove the music as well. And I'm gonna pass on to you. So let me introduce Andy. Andy is the head of regulatory and government affairs at infoStellar. Andy also worked for OneWeb, Avanti Communications as director of policy and government affairs. He's an ex-colleague of mine, and still we are colleagues from a long time ago. And also Andy has held positions at the BNSC, the previous entity, a space agency entity in the UK before it became the current UK space agency. And Andy, if you want to add anything else about yourself, you're most free, and I'll leave you now with your panel. Thank you so much.
Well, Tony, thank you very much for that kind introduction. I think you've basically put 30 years of career into a very potted history, so thank you. I'd like to welcome everyone today to the ground segment innovation session as part of the ACCESS.SPACE virtual conference 2021. First of all, a very big thank you to LIS Space for sponsoring this panel. So thank you, Giovanni and Leif. Today we have 5 speakers. We're going to look at the ground segment service provision, both from a, if you excuse me for saying it, Iraklis as a more conventional end of the segment, and then as the new space with LIS Space. And then we'll look at ground segment innovation in products and services with QuadSAT, Groundspace, and Novantel. So we have, sort of 5 interesting presentations for you to come through. So infoStellar are a Japanese startup as a ground segment as a service provider. We basically provide connectivity to a global network of other people's ground stations through a cloud-based platform called Stellar Station that enables new space satellite operators to connect into that network. And we're basically reducing the effort for new space operators to join the ground segment. So, without further ado there, now who infoStellar are. I would like to introduce our first speaker today, Iraklis, who's the VP of Business Development at Swedish Space Corporation UK. So over to you, Iraklis.
May I suggest the other panelists to stop their video, and we'll get Iraklis first, and then you can come in after him. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andy and Tony. I will just share my screen to present a couple of slides. Okay, yeah, as Andy said, I am Iraklis Hatziathanasiou. I'm the Vice President of Business Development in the SSC Office UK. And for those that don't know Swedish Space Corporation very well, I have a couple of slides that I can use. We've been in operation for more than 60 years, and we're organized into 3 main divisions: the science and launch services, the satellite ground network services, and spacecraft operations and engineering services. So on the science and launch services, we've got a range of offerings at the moment. The division is based in S-Range in Kiruna in the north of Sweden, which is a very large area. The size, it's actually larger than Luxembourg. But from there, we launch sounding rockets. We do technology demonstrations, stratospheric balloons. We have our satellite ground network, one of the ground networks that we operate, and reusability testbed. And pretty soon we will start offering launching of small satellites. On the other side of the other division of the organization, which is the largest part of the organization, we offer the satellite ground network services. We own and operate the largest commercial network in the world, with antennas, as you can see on the map, almost everywhere. And of course, we have 600 employees with 30 nationalities in 20 locations in 10 countries. In the engineering services, this is a division that is based in Germany, and we offer a whole host of support services through that, from satellite spacecraft operations the ground segment infrastructure, the systems engineering, training and simulations, mission assessment and engineering, and consultancy on whatever is required. That part of the organization operates quite a lot of spacecraft, including Galileo, Copernicus, EUMETSATs. And it's also quite a large part of the organization, almost as big as the satellite services division. The UK office is reasonably new. It started in late 2019, and it's established in the UK at the Harwell site, at science site, and it's a fast-growing team. We have been established to develop a range of disruptive technologies for space communications. And I will briefly mention here as a teaser a development that we're working on at the moment, which is quite revolutionary. And it's supported by the European Space Agency and the UK Space Agency. So I know that SSC is known for being a traditional and old space network provider, but we have recognized the problem with the ground station, the ground networks not having advanced as fast as they should have. So we are actually now working on redesigning the whole communications chain, all aspects of the system, including the antenna technologies, the spacecraft architecture and networking solutions. We are addressing the system with new waveforms and signals, and the way that those occupy spectrum, trying to address also the issue of spectrum allocation, spectrum management. And of course, within that, we include the network availability and resource allocation. With all those technologies, of course, require a new way of operating spacecraft. So we're also developing an automated spacecraft operations system for any type of satellites and constellations. So with that, I will just pass it back to Andy for the introduction of the next presenter.
Thank you, Iraklis. Very much appreciated. And I must admit, I think we all wish that we'd come up with your tagline, "We help Earth benefit from space." But I'd now like to introduce our next speaker, and that's Giovanni Pandolfi, the co-founder and Chief Strategy Officer for LIS Space. So over to you, Giovanni.
Thanks, Andy, and thanks, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here and sponsoring this panel. So I'll share my screen. Hopefully you can see it. Give me a second. Okay. Yes. So basically, I'm Giovanni Pandolfi Bortoletto. I'm one of the co-founders and chief strategy officer of LIS Space. Basically, we started the company a few years ago by looking at what were the kind of applications, of course, and how the market was growing in the new space market, as Iraklis also pointed out. And so there are different applications, different uses of satellites, but at the end of the day, what is really needed is a way to actually downlink data in an efficient and an effective way to the ground, and then distribute it, and then definitely, of course, also for operations. And the main needs that the market has is, of course, the high data volume because of the increase of number of satellites, but in general, the increase of data gathered in space, low latency, because of course the value of data is really dependent on how fast for certain applications it's dependent on how fast it can be delivered to the end user. Cost efficiency, because all the new space is about cost efficiency. It is really needed for sustainable development of the space economy. Flexibility and scalability, because requirements are changing every day, missions are changing every day, and user requests are changing every day. So we need to be adaptable to that. And then, of course, simplified operations. So try to be one of the easiest way to actually connect to your spacecraft. And so with those needs in mind, we came out with the ground segment as a service concept. And right now we have a natural portfolio of services to try to tackle all the needs of the market, not only the new space market, but also the old space market in some cases. And with that, of course, the first step is to have a global coverage. And we are building it day by day. Right now, we have 8 stations active in Europe and New Zealand. We have a few actually in ships going in their final destinations to Sri Lanka, Shetland, Iceland, and Canada, and US, and Australia. So we are going to expand to these locations that you see right now by the end of this year. Of course, depending on the shipping's constraint that we're seeing in the latest months. And so talking about services, our main service is Lifeline. It's a multi-mission ground segment as a service solution. So multi-missions means that we can use the same infrastructure, the same antennas for different missions with different requirements, modulation schemes, data transfer needs, etc. And it's really ideal for small constellation or single satellite mission where you need to have a high capacity. So you need to have a big network, but don't want to build your own by yourself. And so we have these distributed network based on the stations that you've seen that we can use for different stations. Right now, we are supporting 23 satellites with more that we're actually conducting tests. Right now, we have 28 in backlogs, and the major part coming online with the transporter to launch in the next, in June, July. And then we have quite a few more incoming. So it's definitely a working network, and we are expanding quite a bit all our capacity to sustain all our active and incoming customers. Then if you are instead looking for a support for a constellation, then we have another kind of service that makes much more sense, that is called LiftKey, and it is a dedicated ground segmented service solution. So basically, we build up an entire ground station network suited to your mission. And this makes sense economically when you have a constellation of 30, 40 satellites up. This is just because basically you're filling up the capacity, and it's much more efficient and effective to work with a dedicated network. Right now, we are supporting actually ACCESS with 5 satellites already in orbit and 95 are coming. And we are in talks, quite advanced talks with a few other operators for more than 300 satellites to come. Then we have seen last year that actually there was an interest to this concept of ground segmented service, not only for satellites, but also for launch vehicles. And so last year, we started with this LVT service. And yeah, we are going to change this name because to have something more appealing. So it's launch vehicle tracking as a service, basically using the same method with the ground station deployed on need, and then the support through Lifeline for launch vehicles. We have already supported 2 flight tests, and then we have 12 launches in backlog already with Virgin Orbit, and even more in common with different operators. So basically, we are trying to come up with a one-stop shop for different solutions for ground segment as a service, try to really provide effective and efficient connectivity to any space asset in any orbit, any class, whatever. Here are my contacts. Feel free to ask any question. I will be really glad to answer. Andy, back to you.
Thank you very much, Giovanni. Very much appreciated. We're now, having heard from our ground segment service providers, we're going to move to the product and services side of the ground segment, starting with Joakim Espeland from QuadSAT. QuadSAT are a Danish company that supplies drone-based antenna tracking and testing solutions. So over to you, Joakim.
Thanks, Andy, and thanks for having me here today. I'm going to just share my screen as well. Let's see if this helps. I'm guessing that you can see my presentation here now. So QuadSAT's mission is to really add a new dimension to antenna diagnostics. It means that we can really bring what it is that we use a drone system to make antenna measurements when you before have had to put them in a laboratory or a test range This is a complementary solution that can be used also in situ to the kind of current infrastructure that already exists. It's a good way to facilitate research and development programs for new antenna models, but it's also really helpful when you want to get the data of the antenna as it performs where it is. So QuadSAT was founded in 2017 and we're backed by venture capital. We have 20 employees today and now growing quite rapidly, and we're based in Odense, Denmark. We also have a research facility in the UK. What we do is that we turn a drone system into a flying antenna diagnostic system. The core competences of QuadSAT really lies in the pre-flight and post-flight software of a drone system, as well as the payload hardware that you can see on there. So we develop unique payloads that goes on drones and are stabilized in flight so that you can get really accurate measurements. When you look at the architecture of the system, it looks something like that. You have a drone in the air that transmits to the antenna on the test. You have a spectrum analyzer or a power meter, and you combine the data at a ground control station through our QuadSAT software. We use real-time kinematics to achieve a positional accuracy or known accuracy of the probe on the drone at about 3 centimeters. The flights are fully automated, meaning that you, as the user, just inputs the frequency you want to test, the type of test you want to do, the location of the antenna under test, and the distance that you would want to have from the antenna. Typically, you want to be in the far field of an antenna. Then the drone takes off, flies the test, and lands fully automated. The system looks like this and can be easily deployed at ground stations. It can easily be packed into a carry-on case and brought on an airplane, so you can take it and go anywhere to perform these measurements. The measurements that we do are primarily copolar, crosspolar, raster scans. We also do interference checks, looking at, for example, where if you have close by base stations or any interfering equipment, how does your antenna pattern look compared to that? Where should you be careful on having interfering sources? We can also simulate TLE, so we can simulate low Earth orbit satellites or MEO satellites before they are even in orbit, to make sure your ground segment is ready to address these opportunities as they come along. We've been working with the European Space Agency for the last couple of years, and have just renewed a contract with them now to bring this product into the market. The starting point of it was to work together with the more established satellite operators. So we have been working with SES, Eutelsat, Intelsat, Inmarsat, and ACCESS.SPACE to comply with the kind of type approval or antenna certification programs that they are running. So yeah, that's a little bit about QuadSAT, and I'm open for questions and to discuss more. Thank you very much.
Joakim, thank you very much. I very much appreciate it. We now move on to Groundspace and Radim Badsi, the CEO. Groundspace helps satellite operators rationalize their workflow, simplifies their data distribution, improves traceability, and prevents cybersecurity threats. So over to you, Radim.
Thanks, Andy. Hello, everyone, and thank you, Tony, for inviting me to this conference. So I'm Radim, the co-founder and CEO of Groundspace. We are a French startup focusing on mission support software. And today I'd like to tell you a little bit about what we do. So these are the three main areas we focus on. So first and foremost, we help satellite operators make their ground segment workflows work, whether they need to produce routine reports or let's say command their satellites using a mobile phone app. We can help them formalize the workflow and implement it efficiently. We can also help them link different systems together, whether they're all located at the same site or in remote locations. We make sure that the data they produce is available everywhere where it needs to be and used at its full potential. And at last, but not least, we help satellite operators tackle cybersecurity risks. For example, when they offload some of their processing to the cloud and rely on remote services. So let me briefly present our current product line. So our first product, SALAS Log, can be used as a simple logbook to record events entered manually by spacecraft operators. But it can also collect all events from the various systems in the ground segment. And it includes an engine that can detect specific events and react to them. For example, alert the spacecraft operator when something wrong is detected. SALAS Plan provides mission planning and scheduling capabilities. Since it is capable of detecting scheduling conflicts, resolving them, and even automatically generating a schedule, it can drastically reduce how long it takes to plan operations, especially when working around anomalies or special cases. And finally, SALAS Hub is our workflow and data flow manager. It helps operators formalize workflows in the ground segment and track their progress. It is able to automatically trigger tasks, for example, sending commands to the spacecraft. So although our products can be used as standalone applications, they are actually designed to work together to provide an integrated solution that we call SALAS. So I'm not going to get into too much detail, but this is essentially how it works. The SALAS suite is built around an AI-based optimization and deconfliction engine that determines what needs to happen, when and where. It decides what to do based on current demand and the state of the various systems and resources. I know this sounds more or less like a typical planning system, but what makes SALAS different is the flexibility of inputs that can be used to generate scheduling constraints. The goal is to be able to quickly adapt to new types of missions and maximize the level of autonomy in the ground segment we can provide. So here you can see some use cases. So SALAS can help you make your mission more robust by increasing the responsiveness of your operations. So for example, if you have an anomaly on a, let's say, remote sensing satellite, SALAS can quickly determine how to minimize service disruption to your customers. It will try to reschedule all planned tasks on other satellites in the fleet and delay tasks that are not time critical. And by the way, this capability can also be used to allow you to maximize the use of your satellite by essentially overbooking it and offering different use of service to your customers. Second use case, we're starting to see more and more ground segments where the processing of payload data is offloaded to the cloud, and SALAS can help you track that data and ensure that sensitive information doesn't become accidentally exposed to unauthorized third parties. And finally, by formalizing and automating workflows, SALAS allows you to start with a smaller ground segment and add new satellites to your fleet as you grow, without having to redesign your ground segment or significantly increase your staffing needs. So thank you, and feel free to drop me an email if you'd like more information. Thanks.
Radim, thank you very much appreciated. We now move to our last but not least speaker of the day, Massimo Lucera, the CEO of Novantel. Novantel specializes in Earth station and SATCOMs engineering, integration and testing. So over to you, Massimo.
Okay. Hello. Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Andrew, for the introduction. and nice to meet all of you. It's my first time to participate to the ACCESS.SPACE conferences, and it's honestly very, very interesting because I see a lot of experience and knowledge. And let me open my video. So the company was created in 2007 and founded in 2007 by two specialists that are still shareholders in the company, and was born according to the Italian activities based mostly on Fucino area near L'Aquila, where is based the second headquarters of Novantel, and where we have also our team and our engineer team too. As you know, Fucino is one of the biggest teleport in the world, let me say, with over 135 satellite ground antennas. Okay, thank you. So, and this area gave us the possibility to grow in terms of knowledge of ground station in KU, KA, and different frequencies. So all my team became faster, and a real professionalist experience in this kind of maintenance and services required by Leonardo, Telespazio, Etisalat, Sky in terms of broadcasting transmission, military services. So right now, Novantel, as you can see, the following competence. So we don't build antenna, but with our team, with our engineer, we are ready to renovate or refurnish and modify the feed, integrate the feed according with the requirement of our customer. Plus, we are able to develop on our own our motor drive unit or access control unit in order to implement the new potential services, also digital, in order to monitoring the activities of the antenna for any kind of requirement that, for example, we discovered in the last 2 years in the new prospective fields that right now are very, very interesting for our young people in research and development. As you see, we have also an area mostly specialized in the special project that we are working with INAF in Bologna, in which we are right now doing a special research in new frequencies that will be applied for special transmission and high power frequencies. And then with Thales Alenia, we are developing a new project in the military area where we have all the certification in order to participate to the tender of NATO in Europe, and not only. If you see, my team has done installation and we can say also not assistance in the standard concept in terms of, for example, I mean technical support, but in project field in a various area of the world in which our knowledge was always appreciated and recognized internationally. So as you can understand, my background is not engineer, so I can give you just a draft description of what exactly we do in terms of activity, but obviously I'm really open to, in the next step, to introduce my team in order to have more technical information and more details of how we can grow in this great area. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Massimo.
Thank you.
Very much appreciated. I wonder if I could ask all the panelists now to turn on their videos so that we can join as a panel session. I'd like to encourage the audience, if they have any questions, to raise it through the Q&A session. We'll do our best to address those through. But I thought I'd like to start off with a question to the panel. In terms of evolution of technologies, we find that the ground segment hasn't necessarily matched the pace of development of the space segment, especially when you compare to the development rate that's happened in new space. I was wondering really if the panel have any views on what stifled innovation in the ground segment over the last 10 years or so.
Andy, I guess I can start really, and I'm sure the other guys will jump in. I think, you know, it's not an easy question to answer. I think there are multiple reasons why the ground networks have not really evolved and developed in the same rate that the new space industry did. And in a way, it hasn't really addressed the requirements of the new space industry. I think we see a lot, we've seen some innovation, but the innovation is more in making existing technologies more efficient and more automated, rather than creating new technologies, which is something that we are trying to address at the moment in SSE UK. I think a part of the reason for that is the way that the industry have viewed the communications aspect with the ground as a point-to-point communications rather than a complete networking solution. There is a big element and a lot to be said there about the role of ITU and the restrictions that the ground companies, the ground network companies, have to comply with when it comes to communicating. You know, selection of frequencies. And any new system that comes into development at the moment is facing the same problem of first having to demonstrate a solution, a technical solution, in a frequency which is mostly allocated for development, for testing, for you know, for new systems, and then having to migrate that into a working environment. So finding, you know, spending the money to develop a prototype into a frequency band that will probably not be appropriate for commercial service is actually a big obstacle. I think it's one of the major issues here that needs to be addressed. And I think ITU has a big role to play here. There are very well-defined and proven technologies that have been used in terrestrial communications that are appropriate for space. They have been demonstrated and they have been proven, but making the jump to commercial offering is actually big problem right now. Which frequency do you select? I mean, and the other point I see is the differentiation of data. You know, depending on the application of the spacecraft, you have to file into different frequency. That's madness. You know, data is data. Having to jump between frequencies and having to have different types of antennas, different types of technologies for each application makes no sense to me. I'll let the other people take on this as well.
I agree with Iraklis. So we didn't see maybe so much technology innovation on the, let me call it, the hardware side. So antennas are basically the same for a few years. There are a few studies for phased array or multi-beam antennas, but they're not there yet, or maybe they're not there yet in an economical way. What has been more of innovation pushes, so where also we try to push more, is like Iraklis said, on the automations processes. So really try to abstract as much as possible the hardware or infrastructure part from the service itself, because also like in the cellular market, we don't care about how the infrastructure is built. We just care of using a service that is working and is reliable and has a decent coverage. So we're trying to do the same kind of abstraction, but I agree that we need to push more on a kind of application really networking within space and ground. That's probably the way to go. And I also agree on the difficulties of frequencies and probably applying a kind of structure that was already present, but that is not really aligned with the push of the market itself. On that, I don't have a solution. Of course, if someone has a solution, that could be really, really great for everyone in the market. But it's tricky. But the good thing, and I'll close with this, I believe that a good thing that really show that this is a natural developing economy, so the space economy is that we are really focusing not just on technologies, but on processing services, etc., where the technology is part of it, but it's not the full part. So, and this, I believe, is a good first step to have a sustainable economy.
Thank you, Iraklis and Giovanni. Do any of the other panel members have anything they'd like to add to that question?
Yeah, I think also one perspective is that, you know, satellites in space is very sexy. So it gets a lot of attention as you put a new satellite that has a new feature out there. But a new antenna that is very small or something like that might not get that same attention, at least not initially, until it's being rolled out and proven a great success. Meanwhile, shooting a new satellite that is trying to do something immediately grabs the attention. So I think that there is a lot of things happening in the ground segment, but it might not get the same kind of attention as you do when you're actually out in space.
Thank you. Radim, Massimo, do you have anything you want to add?
Well, I mean, I absolutely agree with what's been said, and actually, well, as a startup, when talking, for example, with VCs, with investors, it's pretty clear that it's much more difficult to get them excited about the ground segment. And I think especially for innovative startups, it is actually more difficult to find funding if you're in the ground segment business than in the space segment.
Indeed. I wonder then perhaps if building on from that answer, that we look at the situation. I mean, everybody here today has presented innovative solutions to move forward. But as we hear, that the market is very conservative, it's very traditional, doesn't necessarily respond to innovation, at least in the RF side, in the same way as it would elsewhere. So I wonder what the reaction you've had when presenting your new product solution to the market's been like, and you know what hurdles you've had to overcome in addressing that.
Well, I can take this if you want. So at the start, really hard. You know, as a startup, basically, we try to build all our own services starting for the market requirements, but then adding some part that we believe were really needed. Maybe not yesterday, but today, yes, and tomorrow for sure. So, for example, also like all our way of scheduling the contacts with all our customers. There was a thing that was totally not seen as a need, because of course the booking strategy has always been there. It's the most easy way to do it. But today, and it really mean today, we are really seeing the positive effect of this. So I believe the hard part is to make the customer actually see the positive effect of your solution in an operational environment. Use case, test case are always good, but the customer is really convinced when you're actually solving a problem for them in operational phase. If you're not, that's probably not a solution that is already understood or appreciated from the market. So the best way is always to get to operation as soon as possible. Of course, with trying to minimize the risks. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on that.
Thank you, Giovanni. Anybody else?
I guess I can add a little bit to what Giovanni just said. I agree, first of all, with most of the things that Giovanni said. And I would like to add that there is a fundamental issue here. New products from the ground segment have to comply with a lot of red tape that our customers are facing. I mean, when they put an application in for a license for frequency filing, they have to declare application, they have to declare what mission is doing, and that can affect how quickly and if they can get filing for the mission. So if we go with an offering to those customers that is not fully 100% compatible with those obstacles that they have to face, quite rightly, they ask a lot of questions. They're trying to find, how is this likely to affect them? So, from that perspective, the ground network, ground services are being held hostage to the red tape that is being introduced by the agencies and and ITU in this case. We can innovate very fast. We can develop technologies that are a lot more appropriate both to the traffic and the number of satellites that we're expecting to see in the next few years. We can provide solutions that can allow us to share the spectrum quite efficiently, a lot more efficiently than is being shared by anyone at the moment. The technologies are there. We can just develop and start using them. The problem is that if we make that investment and try to introduce them in the market, there is a period of time where the regulations have to change. The environment for managing the spectrum has to change. And that is almost a business killer. Unless you find a way to bypass all of that, it makes it extremely difficult to develop a new technology and offer it to the market without the regulatory environment changing extremely quickly at the same pace that the development is happening. And I guess that's really part of the problem of introducing new technologies. I don't know if everybody else in the panel agrees and if they have a different experience, but that's my point of view at this point in time.
Thank you, Iraklis. Would anyone else like to add to that?
Yeah, I think for us, maybe the biggest challenges with the market was in the beginning. It was something that the industry hadn't seen before. Drones were new. The laboratories that are in use and are kind of the standard today is very, very accurate. So kind of the faith in that a drone solution can achieve comparable measurements was hard to convince before you had the system in place. But as we got some of the larger satellite operators more on board on the idea, it kind of opened more up from being, is this possible, to when is it ready, and when can it be started to be used. And that was a nice transition to see from the market side. Also, drone technology has matured a lot the last 4 years since we started the company, where basically when we started, all you could get was you had to hand build your own drone, or you got a drone with wires out of everywhere. Now they come as more looking like a product, looking more professional, and something that can actually fit into what you expect to see out of a measurement equipment.
I agree with Joakim. So it's really changed your life in a startup, at least when you start to deliver services or products, not only on the kind of heritage that you are creating, and so that the customer can see you as an operational company, but really also inside the company itself. So it grew a lot more of actual experience that you can we put in the product development and then service delivery. And we have seen this total change, I believe, from last year to this year. And basically right now we have more and more customers, returning customers, because they see the service and they actually like also how you can go back with that. So acquiring the requests show that you're actually believing in what they ask, and so try to provide a solution for that. So I believe really on a startup life, that is the game-changing moment.
No, absolutely.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. I wonder, as the panel discussion today was on innovation, as we sort of wrap up for today, what you see as the the next stage of development, what will be the new innovation coming through the industry, and what impact that might have on our sector?
I guess I can start again, Andy. I think there is a big change required in the way the spectrum is served. And that is obvious both from the number of satellites we're expecting to see in the future, but also from current operational conditions. I would say that the way we're sharing spectrum at the moment is totally inappropriate. So this is the first thing that has to change. And unfortunately for us, ITU doesn't move very fast in this domain. So I think we're going to suffer for a number of years the slow pace of change that the regulatory authorities will move. But at the same time, I mean, we are working on a number of new technologies. We're working on beamforming antennas in technologies currently used in terrestrial applications where the need for a license is not necessary. The type approval system is more appropriate in these cases. We're working on making the spacecraft part of a network rather than an endpoint of a communications channel. And all of this are things that will become reality in the next 10 years. And there is no choice. I mean, the traffic and the amount of spacecraft that is being launched demands this type of solution. So I guess we're going to see some quite drastic changes. I'm just worried about how long it will take to see those changes.
Yeah, I agree on those things there that we will definitely see. There's a lot of interesting developments in the technology, especially on cognitive radio capabilities, artificial intelligence in sharing radio spectrum, which is very, very interesting, and exactly what Giovanni and LIS Space is doing there, that you can have one antenna doing multiple jobs. I think that's definitely a big leap forward when you think about the resources that goes into deploying and setting up these types of the type of infrastructure that we have. So I think that's really what we're going to see and come into fruition.
I think on the infrastructure side, we're going to see more and more shared infrastructure. So we already see it quite a lot with ground station networks. But you already have operators offloading the processing of data to the cloud, and we're actually going to see more and more cloud operations actually. Now there's going to be less and less on-premise infrastructure.
I kind of agree with all of you guys. I believe that there will be some. So definitely, we need to work with the spectrum management in general, but also try to not only push the ITU or in general some other association in a certain direction, but also make the market more aware of the actual regulations and how they can move inside those regulations, because sometimes it's not so known actually, and it's taken for granted. as all the ground segment in certain cases. But in general, I believe that will be probably part of this innovation in technology. So as you said, beamforming or phased array is definitely an interesting technology that could ease a lot of work in some cases. On the other side, all the these abstraction and maybe going more to the networking solution that Iraklis was talking about before. So making space assets and ground stations as nodes of a single or network as it is the internet, instead of the way it is done today. One other thing that I see as innovation is not really technology innovation, is more on business model innovation, and is what we're seeing right now. So basically, really the creation of services that one user can actually select from and build its own solution upon that, instead of building its own thing from the ground up. And this is a real side of a growing economy, and that's I believe the main part of this market, to actually see that it will get on a real economy and will continue for the next years.
Giovanni, thank you very much. Unfortunately, we have a hard stop in just a few seconds. So I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the panel, Iraklis, Giovanni, Radim, Joakim, and Massimo, for your contributions today. It's been very much appreciated. Again, like to thank the ACCESS.SPACE Alliance for giving us the opportunity to all come together today and speak, and especially again to Giovanni and LIS Space for sponsoring the panel. So thank you very much, gentlemen. It's been a real pleasure.
Yes, I would like to thank everyone here in the panel, and also Leaf for sponsoring the panel. Thank you very much. Very appreciated. We are a non-for-profit association in a way. We all voluntary. We're doing this our own pockets basically. So any sponsorship will be very, very helpful. Also, if you want more information and you would like to join the ACCESS.SPACE Alliance, just send us an email and we'll give you all the information required. The fees for the alliance are very, very minimal, as you may know or may not know, and we are here to help all the space sector from across the globe. We have companies from all over the place, basically. Thank you very much for attending. I will now be preparing the next panel, which I will share with the space agencies. European Space Agency, Australian Space Agency, and the Portuguese Space Agency will be at this panel. Please attend and ask questions if you like. We will have a great panel coming up, and the whole afternoon is actually going to be extremely, extremely great, with finance and licensing for launchers, as well as insurance, as well as talking about the space market, new space, and so on. We'll be there to actually greet you, and also we have a keynote speech from Space Application Catapult at 1300 UK time. All the best. Bye bye.
Thank you.